Listed by Elle magazine as one of 12 women changing the world, Minna Salami is a Nigerian-Finnish writer and commentator, and the founder of Miss Afropolitan, a multiple award-winning feminist blog. She is a member of Duke University's Global Educator Network, as well as the Guardian Africa Network and Guardian Books Network. She is a digital consultant for the Pan-African news channel TBC News, a board member of the UK Charity for Books' Sake, and Signifier UK. As a speaker, Salami is a frequent guest at events and universities in South Africa, Norway, Nigeria, Gabon, Morocco, France, Sweden, Germany, Switzerland, China, Gambia, Austria, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the United States of America. In 2014, she gave a TEDx talk. Salami is listed as one of 40 African change makers under 40 by Applause Africa, one of 50 remarkable women connected by Nokia, one of Nigeria's 100 most influential women by Y Niger, and one of the top 100 most influential Black people on digital or social media by Elon Media. She is the African Diaspora Awards 2013 winner of the Outstanding Achievement in Media, as well as the Women for Africa 2013 Blogger of the Year, and shortlisted Blogger of the Year by Red Magazine, Red's Hot Women Awards 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the keynote speaker for Xavier University's African Students Association 10th Annual Gala, Minna Salami.
Thank you so much, Essay, for that really wonderful introduction. And thank you, Xavier University African Students Association, for inviting me to deliver this keynote. I'm incredibly honored and excited to be here today. Thank you. Before I begin, I want to state my goal with this talk. I'm here to motivate and inspire us to engage with the world of ideas. This is my intention because I believe that big ideas can change the world. In true African fashion, let me begin with a story. It's a story about a village in the highlands of northern Ethiopia, east of the enchanting city of Bahir Dar, and west of Lalibela, the city with those incredible rock-hewn churches. The village that I speak about consists of clay houses, a textile factory, a grinding mill, a tourist hostel, a school, and a library. The village is known as Aura Amba. However, to refer to Aura Amba as a village is misleading, for villages have features that are characteristic of village life, and Aura Amba defies all characteristic definitions whatsoever. Instead, what is rare in most villages is the norm in Aura Amba. For example, in Aura Amba, women and men are completely equal. They're not equal in the sense that gender equality is predominantly thought of today. You know, the kind of corporate and gimmicky lingo that is used in terms of empowerment, and which centers predominantly on financial and economic growth. Rather, they are equal in an intuitive and graceful way, one which recognizes that equality is essential for social harmony and spiritual mutuality between the genders. In Aura Amba, women participate in public life to the same extent as men do. They are doctors and decision makers. They plow the fields and they handle the oxen, because it simply makes sense for them to do that. Simultaneously, men share the responsibility of household chores. As one of the residents put it, he said, "Women are not the only ones who eat. I also eat. Therefore, I should also cook. I'm not ashamed of it. On the contrary, it makes me proud." Extraordinary as they are, reciprocal gender relations are not the only standout factor in this small in size but ample in heart village in Ethiopia. The economy in Aura Amba is also organized in a way that is socially conscious. The main income generator in the village, its weaving and milling industry, where all residents who are able to work, divides its profits evenly among citizens. The remaining profits are invested into social services such as healthcare, elderly care, and a community school. Furthermore, environmental sustainability is not a goal in Aura, it is a reality. What is now a necessary but catchy concept, the green economy, is not a new idea in Aura. The community even decided to tell aid agencies to stop sending them food because receiving food aid was preventing them from generating sustainable sources of finance. Similarly, religious attitudes in Aura differ from those in the rest of Ethiopia. Aura-Ambans are neither Muslim nor Christian, as most Ethiopians are, but nor are they theologically skeptic. They simply do not believe, as one of them put it, that God should be locked up in churches and mosques, but rather that God can be felt everywhere. Not only is God felt everywhere, but you could argue that Aura is one of the few places in the world where, in the words of Buddha, however many holy words you read, what good will they do if you do not act upon them? Could be said to underpin political life. By the way, from the research that I've done, I feel quite confident to say that Xavier University is another one of those few places in the world where this kind of enlightened view on religion exists. I've been really inspired by reading about the dialogues that take place here on campus. The ancient Greeks came up with the concept of democracy. More specifically, Plato defined democracy as rule of the people. Plato's democracy, however, was more despotic than many of us would approve of today. But he left us with a view of what political life may look like. This is a view which few societies have managed to emulate. Aura-Ambans have, however. Their democracy is a democracy in its truest sense, as a rule of the people. Every 2 weeks, residents there meet to discuss and reach consensus on matters that equally affect them. It was during such a meeting that, for instance, it was decided that elderly care would be the duty of everyone, and that health care and education would be free. Harmony is often mistaken for monotony, but this is far from the truth. By contrast, harmony is the acceptance of difference. In Aura-Amba, students are encouraged to learn various languages: French, English, German, Spanish. Not only because it is enjoyable to be able to communicate in a language other than one's own, but because they're also encouraged to travel overseas and to study at international universities, and then return, if they want to Aura-Amba. But how did Aura-Amba come to exist? This was a question that I posed in 2014 to a filmmaker couple called Paulina Tervo and Serdar Ferit, who had filmed a documentary about Aura-Amba. It all started with one man having a big idea, they told me. The man that they speak of is Zumra Nuru, a farmer who, led by the simple conviction that there were better ways to organize society, founded Aura-Amba in 1972. Since childhood, Zumra Nuru had felt frustrated about the way that women were treated. He had witnessed his mother be abused by his father. He was also disturbed by conflicts between Muslims and Christians, and by a system in which political ill will and a lack of sustainable agriculture had caused one of the greatest famines in history. In short, Zumra Nuru founded Aura-Amba because he had an idea that if people could live at peace with each other and with nature, they could also live at peace with themselves. I'm not suggesting that Aura-Amba is flawless, far from it. The community is not wealthy, they do not have a university, they increasingly rely on tourism to get by. And nor am I suggesting that Aura Amba provides the model on which all other societies should be built upon. Although it is true that the community has attracted a lot of interest from religious leaders and politicians around the world who wish to learn about and from the village where literacy levels and life expectancy and gender equality and economic growth far exceed the national average. But rather, I'm sharing the story of Aura Amba because, firstly, it is a story that reminds us of who we are. As Africans and friends of Africa, we find ourselves at a time when we're caught trying to make sense of an Africa that is caught in between what feels like two different eras altogether. One tremendously uplifting and the other equally depressing. The African zeitgeist is a hybrid of post-colonialism, Afro-optimism, Afro-pessimism, and so on. We are therefore a generation who find ourselves caught in the duality of the times. But we are also a generation with the unique and exciting opportunity to shape Africa. Most countries in Africa are still young and therefore malleable. We are the ones who can mold Africa, the African future, into a great one. But to do that, we need to have a vision of what Africa can be. The vision should be neither darkened by a sense of doom, nor rose-tinted with false optimism. It should be a hopeful vision that is rooted in reality. And the reality is that we can build our continent into one of prosperity. Radical prosperity in the 21st century. It depends on gender equality, economic stability, sound infrastructure, accountability, education, healthcare, and environmental sustainability. But it also depends on imagination and implementation of ideas. If we don't have ideas for the future, if we are not envisioning what a flourishing Africa could look like, we won't reach our potential. Secondly, I share the story of Aura Amba because it is a story that the entire world needs to learn from. It is a story that certainly defies the negative stereotypes of Africa and that illustrates that forward thinking is not private to the West alone, as many history books falsely imply. I like how Wole Soyinka puts it when he said, "Africa as we know it today remains the monumental fiction of European creativity." Imagine that you were able to peel the African continent along its coasts. Imagine that from west to east and north to south, when you peeled it, a new but familiar world emerged. Imagine that this new Africa was progressive, modern but historical, a continent waiting to be discovered, only this time by Africans ourselves. Imagine the astonishment you might feel at finding what you had always taken for granted or overlooked. When I read about Aura Amba, I find this hidden world. I find this other Africa. I find this Africa where deliberate care is taken to protect the ideas that are rooted in Africa. I find an Africa ahead of its time. Lastly, and most importantly, I share the story of Aura Amba because what is truly remarkable about Zumra Nuru, apart from having big ideas, which, let's face it, many of us do, is that he actually felt inspired to transform his idea into a reality. There were 19 people in 1972 who founded Aura Amba, and today 500 people live there. On that note, I want to end with a proposition to you. I propose that you begin to craft your big idea for Africa. By big, I do not mean that you have to set up a village in Africa. I don't mean that it has to be a political or development idea. I don't even mean that you have to physically be in Africa. although never underestimate the power of your presence. By big, I simply mean an idea that begins in your heart, because change begins here, in the heart, and not in the mind. The big idea that I had when I launched my blog, Miss Afropolitan, was to make African women claim their power. After the Arab region, Africa sadly remains the most oppressive continent of women in our world, according to the Gender Equality Index. Our societies will not progress if they don't value every citizen, girl and boy. It remains my goal to contribute in a significant way to a discourse about African feminism and how it can inspire both men and women to create societies that are smart, harmonious, and transcendent. This is why I personally love the story of Outer Amba. It makes me feel proud. It inspires and motivates me. It reminds me that progress is never in imitation, but in truly being yourself. It is a demonstration of what becomes possible when you have the courage to transform your ideas into action. Because ultimately, transforming an idea into action is like recording a song in a studio rather than humming it in the shower. So, I urge you, go into the studio and press record. Thank you.